For centuries, in the silent ledgers of history and the vaults of power, a war has been fought. It is a conflict that has shaped the destiny of empires, the fate of nations, and the very fabric of our modern lives. On one side, an ancient, unyielding guardian, gold, heavy, tangible, and eternal. On the other, a nimble, silver-tongued revolutionary, paper, light, limitless, and built entirely on promises. This is not a battle of armies, but of ideologies. The struggle between these two forces, between substance and faith, between discipline and desire, has toppled kings, bankrupted republics, and quietly rewritten the story of human civilization itself. To understand this war is to understand the invisible architecture of our world, and perhaps to see the ghost of our own financial future in the echoes of the past. We must begin at the source, at the very origin of trust. Long before the concept of a bank or a state existed, human beings needed a way to store value and trade beyond the simple, immediate barter of a goat for a sack of grain. They searched for something durable, something rare, something that everyone could agree had inherent worth. They found gold. It was honest money. It didn't rust in the rain. It didn't rot in the earth. You couldn't simply wish more of it into existence. To hold a gold coin was to hold a piece of the planet's immutable truth. Its weight in your palm was a certainty. Its gleam was a universal language. Gold was proof. It was nature's perfect, unarguable ledger. But then, as societies grew more complex, a more convenient idea began to circulate. Paper money emerged, first in the form of receipts from trusted goldsmiths. This paper asked for something new and profound. It asked for faith. It was a promise that this fragile token was as good as the metal it represented. The fundamental schism was born. Gold was the reality. Paper was the claim on that reality. And every promise, no matter how well-intentioned, carries within it the potential for a fall. The first forays into paper currency were not acts of deception, but strokes of brilliant practicality. Imagine a merchant on the Silk Road, his caravan laden with silks and spices. To also carry the heavy gold needed to trade was an invitation to bandits and a logistical nightmare. So, he would deposit his gold with a reputable keeper in one city, receiving a paper note in exchange. He could then travel lightly and safely, presenting the note to an associate in a distant land to reclaim his gold. It was a revolutionary tool, a genius innovation that allowed value to move as fast as a horse could gallop or a sail could catch the wind. It was progress, but this innovation contained a seductive and dangerous seed. A quiet temptation whispered to the goldsmith, to the king, to the banker, if you can create value with ink and paper, why stop at the amount of gold you actually have? If one note is good, are two not better? If you can fund a war, build a monument, or fuel an economic boom by simply printing more promises, why would you ever show restraint? What began as a simple receipt for stored value had become a license to create value from nothing. The first silent, secret betrayal of trust had occurred. What followed was the great pendulum swing of history, a rhythmic, almost predictable cycle between metallic discipline and paper exuberance. Great empires consistently rose on the solid, unforgiving foundation of sound money, often based on gold or silver, and just as consistently, they fell when they abandoned that discipline. The Roman Empire, at its zenith, circulated the denarius, a silver coin trusted from Britain to Babylon. But as the empire's ambitions outstripped its treasury, emperors began to secretly debase the currency, shaving the silver content and mixing in base metals. For a time, the illusion held. The coins looked the same, but their intrinsic value, the trust they embodied, was seeping away. The result was rampant inflation, a collapse in trade, and the economic hollowing out that contributed to the empire's fall. It was a slow-motion lesson in the consequences of breaking trust. Centuries later, the British Empire built its global commercial network on the gold standard. The British pound sterling was, quite literally, a promise to pay a specific weight of gold, and that promise was considered as solid as the Rock of Gibraltar. This trust fueled immense global trade and investment. But then came the First World War. The cost was astronomical, and the governments, desperate for resources, printed paper money far beyond their gold reserves to pay for it. The chain was broken. The discipline of gold was sacrificed for the immediate necessity of war. Paper had staged its rebellion. Even the United States, the ascendant economic superpower, tethered its dollar to gold for most of its history. But after the Second World War, with the Bretton Woods system, the world entered a strange hybrid phase. The US dollar became the world's reserve currency, backed by American gold, while other currencies were pegged to the dollar. It was the gold standard once removed. But as America spent heavily on the Vietnam War and its Great Society programs, the strain showed. The world was flooded with dollars, and foreign governments began to question whether the US still had enough gold to back them all. The system was creaking at its seams. This tension reached its breaking point in the latter half of the 20th century. The global financial system became a high-stakes poker game, with piles of paper dollars on the table and a dwindling stack of gold in the US vault at Fort Knox. The promise of convertibility, the The last thread tying the entire world's money to something real was fraying beyond repair. The standoff could not last. Then, on a fateful Sunday evening in August of 1971, President Richard Nixon addressed the nation. In a move presented as necessary to protect the American economy, he announced that the United States was temporarily suspending the convertibility of the dollar into gold. The world held its breath. The last golden chain had been snapped. With that single act, Nixon fundamentally altered the nature of money. For the first time in all of human history, every major currency in the world was now fiat money, money by government decree, unanchored to any physical commodity. It was a declaration of independence from material reality. Gold, the ancient monarch of finance, was officially dethroned and locked away in vaults, a ghost at the feast. Paper, in its ultimate form, had declared total victory. The war appeared to be over. But as the old adage warns, be careful what you wish for victory always exacts a price. The aftermath of 1971 was the dawn of a new world, a world of intoxicating and unprecedented illusion. At first, it felt like a liberation, a newfound freedom from the shackles of scarcity. Unshackled from gold, central banks and governments held a power that previous generations could scarcely have imagined, the power to create money from nothing. Credit gushed into the economy. Global markets embarked on a historic bull run. It was an age of expansion, a global party where the music was powered by the printing press. You could buy a house with a paper mortgage, build a multinational corporation on lines of credit, and watch your wealth multiply in the digital numbers of a stock portfolio. It felt real, this prosperity built on promises. But this system bred a deep and insidious addiction. Once you discover you can alleviate any crisis, fund any program, or stimulate any slowdown by simply creating more currency, it becomes a politically impossible habit to break. The printing presses, now digital, ran faster and hotter. They funded massive government deficits, inflated serial bubbles in technology, in housing, in assets of every kind. This magnificent, glittering castle of global wealth was built not on a foundation of stone, but on the ever-shifting sands of collective faith. And when that faith cracks, as it did in the stagflation of the 1970s, the stock market crash of 1987, the dot-com bust of 2000, and the catastrophic global financial crisis of 2008, the entire structure trembles. The bill for the paper party always arrives, often in the form of inflation, a silent thief that steals from the savings of everyone who trusted in the promise of paper. Yet, this struggle transcends economics. It is a profound moral conflict reflecting the eternal battle within human nature itself. Gold embodies our disciplined side, the anchor of patience, truth, and restraint, reminding us that resources are finite. Paper speaks to our boundless desire, the sale of imagination and immediate gratification, whispering that limits can be negotiated. But when desire overrides truth, reality exacts its revenge. Today, this invisible war intensifies as central banks create trillions digitally, eroding trust and fueling hyperinflation that vaporizes savings. In response, people are turning to gold and its digital counterpart, Bitcoin, not for perfection, but for their verifiable scarcity in a world drowning in empty promises. The ultimate cyclical lesson remains. Every generation believes it has outgrown the old rules, stacking promises to the sky, convinced the bill will never come. But gold remembers every broken vow throughout history, from the French Revolution to the Weimar Republic, and patiently waits in the shadows. When the castle of paper finally burns, that ancient honest weight will return to measure the ashes of our broken faith and win once more.